We begin tonight with our team coverage on the tragedy in Binghampton. 6 people dead inside a home on Leicester Street. As police search for the killer, they are not yet revealing the story unfolding inside the murder scene.
The victims were found last night at about 6 o'clock. Now, we do know the victims are 2 women and 2 men and 2 young boys. 3 other children were taken to Lebanon in critical condition. Our Dana Rebick is there tonight to begin our team coverage. Dana, any word on how the children are doing tonight? The ones who survived, how are they doing?
Dee, we know that one of those children has been upgraded to serious condition. The other 2 we hear are still in very critical condition. Now, today we had a chance to talk with a neighbor who lives across the street from this house, and he told us he thinks he knows when these murders may have happened. The frosty winter weather this afternoon could not match the chilling discovery made inside this Binghampton home Monday.
These are children that were brutally killed and injured at 722 Leicester. We have dead children. We have dead individuals.
It's just tragic, man. I just feel for the kids. You know, I was out Saturday and they was playing, riding their bikes and stuff, and it's, you know, now to see what happened, it's sad.
Neighbor Wayne Bolden says he went to the store around 5 o'clock Saturday night, came home, and then 2 hours later.
I did hear some shots. Okay, I heard some shots Saturday night, around 7:30 or so, something like that. But I didn't go out to investigate because, you know, we get that around here a lot.
At a news conference this morning, police told us they do not have a motive yet, but do think the killer or killers left the home after the attack. At this point, investigators say they desperately need the community's help.
It is so important. This is our community. This is a stain on our community.
Police tell us the children who did survive could be the best link to help solve this case, once and if they are able to talk with them.
It's going to affect them for the rest of their lives, you know. It's going to be hard. You know? I just feel for them, you know. It's just tragic. You know?
At that news conference this morning, police tell us that at this point they described the investigation as working with a blank piece of paper, and that is why they say they so desperately do need the community's help. They say they will look into any and every single lead that is called in.
Well, Dana, are they releasing the identities of the people who were found dead?
No, they're not. All we know is it was 2 adult women and 2 men.
All right, thanks a lot, Dana. Police tell us the children at the Leicester home range in ages from 18 months to 12 years. Now, if you have any information on the Leicester Street murders,
continuing coverage of this story from the Binghampton neighborhood where those killings happened for you. People there have been gathering all day long to try to come to terms with the tragedy there on Leicester Street.
Yeah, Pastor Keith Norman opened the doors of First Baptist Church on Broad for an all-day prayer vigil, and that church is just a few blocks from where the home where the bodies were found. Eyewitness News Everywhere reporter Tanika Smith sat in on part of the vigil, and Tanika, obviously this is a very trying time for the families and the entire community.
You're right, Bonnie. A lot of people here trying to wrap their minds around that deadly discovery there on Leicester Street. Now, the people here at the First Baptist Church Broad are hoping to do their part to support the victims' families and everyone affected by this tragedy in Binghampton. Now, all throughout the day, this chapel behind me will be open to the public for prayer and meditation. They started this morning around 8 o'clock with the prayer service. About 30 people stood around the altar crying, praying, and worshiping. Pastor Keith Norman not only prayed, but talked to the people about the road ahead. Norman says he wants the faith-based community to step up as first responders during times like these. He also mentioned the fact that in spite of the tragedy, Binghampton is still a safe and valued community. The pastor encouraged members of the media to be sensitive in how we define what happened at the home. And finally, Reverend Norman says what happened on Leicester Street is another example of the greater social issues affecting Memphis and the world.
If you can't face issues and identify them and call them what they are, there's no way to fix them. And so we have to really identify what these ills are. What would cause a person to become so hopeless as to taking innocent lives, as to taking the life of children whom haven't even had an opportunity to begin their life?
We also talked to Deacon Gwen Atkins, and she says this church is committed to standing by the families of the victims.
There are people who love them, people who will stand by them, will help them through this, will comfort them through this.
Pastor Norman says this church is going to provide emotional, spiritual, and financial support. They are taking donations, raising money to pay hospital bills, help with funeral services, or any other needs that these families may have. Again, Bonnie and Terrence, the doors here at this chapel will be open all day long, open to the public. They're encouraging everyone to come, and they're going to have another prayer service tonight at 6 o'clock.
And Tanika, just judging from what's happening at the church today, it appears that it's a pretty tight-knit community around where this Binghampton home is. I'm just curious if anyone in that congregation or at the prayer vigil today saw anything or heard anything suspicious.
Well, Bonnie, nowhere on whether or not anyone here actually had any involvement or lived in that neighborhood where it happened. I do know the pastor said that in some way, either through coming here to worship or through receiving outreach from the church, they do have a connection with some of the victims in this case. We talked to a neighbor earlier when we were over on Leicester Street, and he tells us that he heard several shots sometime around Saturday evening, sometime over the weekend. He says he looked out but didn't see anything, and so he didn't think anything else about it until he heard the news of the bodies being found inside of the home.
All right, Tanika Smith reporting for us in Binghampton. Thank you.
We began with a breaking news alert on the tragedy in Binghampton. Now, we have just learned a $30,000 reward is being offered for information about the Leicester Street killings.
Memphis police have released the names of the 4 adults killed in the home as well. Shindri Robinson, Marissa Renee Williams, those are the 2 women who were killed. Both victims were in their 20s. The men killed are Jessie Dotson and Hollis Seals. They were both in their 30s. The names of the children, however, are not being released. As we say, a $30,000 reward is being offered as part of the Memphis City Council's reward program. And remember, if you have any information about what happened, it could help police crack the case, even the smallest detail. Tonight's top story, new information on the tragedy in Binghampton. We now know the name of the 4 adults found murdered Monday inside the home on Leicester Street.
Police say Cecil Dodson and Marissa Williams lived at the house. They were killed with Shindri Robertson and Hollis Seals. 2 of Dodson's children were also murdered. 3 others were rushed to the hospital. So far, police have not released information about the children. Chief Investigator Jenny DePrizio is on Leicester Street tonight. And Jenny, now police aren't even telling family members about the children.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Dee. You know, for 3 days now, this has been an active crime scene. Police are still here. And take a look, just earlier this afternoon, people started putting stuffed animals out here on the corner of Leicester and Faxon. But, you know, family members say at this point they don't know much more today than they did on Monday.
We are the family left here. We are the victims in this, as far as the people that's got to deal with what's left here, the heartache.
Nicole Dodson is talking about the tragedy that was discovered Monday night on Leicester Street.
It's just like it's still the first night because we don't know nothing no different.
Dodson says she sees police working at the crime scene, but officers are telling the family very little.
I can't say that I'm okay with how they are handling it because I don't have any answers, but I know why they doing it like this because they got to take their procedure too.
They won't even say whichever brother's 5 children are dead or alive.
We can't even see the babies at the hospital. That's my family. Those are my nephews and nieces, my nephew and niece in there. If, you know, those are my those are my loved ones.
As you can see by the mugshots, all 4 of the adult victims had previous run-ins with the law. But Dotson said her brother had changed his ways and had a family that loved and supported him.
He was bettering his life. He was putting his life on a better path.
As for whoever did this, the family is making a plea to the killer to turn himself in.
If you hurting as bad as I am about my brother, my nieces, my nephews, and my family, come on and turn yourself in. Do that for us.
Now, family members say this is very frustrating because not only do they not know which of the children are dead and which are alive, they can't even prepare for the funeral. They tried to go today and make funeral arrangements, but then they realized they don't know which children they need to bury.
Well, Jenny, did the Dotson family know Shindri Robertson and Hollis Seals very well?
That's something we don't know at this point. I can tell you that Nicole Cecil's sister believed that she knew the people inside the house, but it was just late today that those names were identified, so we don't have that answer right now.
All right, Jenny, thanks a lot. Now, there is now a $30,000...
Members of the victims of the Binghampton tragedy are begging that anyone with information come forward tonight.
They want the killer or killers to turn themselves in.
If you hurting as bad as I am about my brother, my nieces, my nephews, and my family, come on and turn yourself in.
Chief Investigator Jenny DiPrizio talked to family members this afternoon, and Jenny, I understand that they are frustrated, understandably.
Yeah, Dee, they are frustrated. You know, for 3 days now, this crime scene tape has been up. Police have been here at the scene, but family members say they don't know much more today than they did on Monday.
Who and why? That's it. Who and why? Why those? Why? It's just like a big old question mark.
Nicole Dotson is talking about the mass murder on Leicester Street.
This is the mind of somebody that's sick. They hurting as bad as we is, whoever did this.
Dotson's brother Cecil was killed along with his girlfriend Marissa Williams and 2 of his children, plus 2 adults.
I have no idea who could have done this to my brother. As far as I know, he don't have no enemies. He don't have no money. He don't have nothing that nobody would be wanting to do this. Why? The only thing my brother ever had in his life was his family.
Dotson says her brother had been in trouble with the law in the past, but had changed.
He was bettering his life. He was putting his life on a better path.
For 3 days now, police have been on the scene looking for clues, and very little information has been released, even to the family.
I've rode past Leicester Street every day since this happened, and I know that they still down there at my brother's house investigating. So long as I see somebody down there investigating, not hearing from them, let me know they working on something to tell me.
Dotson says she last saw her brother Saturday night and never thought it would be her last goodbye.
We are the family left here. We are the victims in this, as far as the people that's got to deal with what's left here, the heartache. My brother's plans for Sunday morning was to go to church. God came and got him, but he didn't take him to church. He took him home.
The death penalty is the one phrase that's buzzing around the Criminal Justice Center this midday as a man accused in the tragedy in Binghampton has his first day in court. 33-year-old Jessie Dotson walked into court today in handcuffs. He's facing 6 counts of first-degree murder and 3 counts of attempted murder. But the issue that everyone is talking about is whether he'll be tried in a death penalty case. Eyewitness News Everywhere reporter Tanika Smith was in court at the Criminal Justice Center when Dotson made his appearance. She joins us on the telephone this morning. Tanika, as I understand it, the key issue today is finding a qualified attorney to represent Mr. Dotson. Is that right?
You're exactly right, Terrence. Now, originally, Judge Ann Pugh had scheduled Jessie Dotson to come back to court, 2 weeks from today on March 24th. But then moments later, they called him back into the courtroom and said they had a conflict. She originally had designated him a public defender. She said they had a conflict with that office, and they have to find a certified death penalty qualified attorney, and that they have a list that they are going to go through, and Dotson will reappear tomorrow to discuss that conflict and his options for legal representation. We do have video of Jessie Dotson entering the courtroom. He was in handcuffs, as Terrence said. He actually had to be released momentarily to take the oath. Dotson told the judge that he had no lawyer and no one to provide an attorney for him. When the judge asked Dotson if he had a job, he said he had worked remodeling houses. He didn't say much more and spoke very softly. But again, expected back here tomorrow morning. The court starts at 9 o'clock. There they will be discussing their options in terms of finding a certified death penalty qualified attorney. Now, Terrence, I talked to the DA's office. They tell me at this point they still have not decided whether or not they are going to pursue the death penalty. And they tell me that they usually do not make that determination until after the defendant has been indicted. I called the Shelby County Public Defender's Office, and they tell me they do have attorneys in their office qualified to handle the cases, and it will go through the Capital Defense Team, which is a team of about 3 attorneys. This case, as you can imagine, will probably take more time and resources, so I'm sure with the Public Defender's Office, they have to make sure they find an attorney who's not only qualified, but who probably has that time to take on this case.
So it sounds like people shouldn't necessarily read too much into the appointment of this public defender who qualifies also to do these death penalty cases. It sounds like this is just a preparation or a precaution, if you will.
Exactly right. I get the impression that they're trying to be prepared for the extreme case so that they can move forward with this trial in a swift manner. But again, yeah, that decision comes from the district attorney's office, and they have not decided whether or not they're going to pursue the death penalty. And something else, Terrence, I can tell you a little bit about the mood in the courtroom. Very tense. Members of the news media were all alert, but when he came into the courtroom, it was that moment where everyone kind of tensed up, kind of looked, set up in their seats to get a glimpse of this man who Memphis police say killed his younger brother, killed his nephews, as well as 3 other adults. So definitely an interesting mood in the courtroom. I also noticed more deputies came into the courtroom around the time that Dotson was expected to enter, I guess, to prepare for any kind of reaction that might have been in the courtroom.
All right, Tanika Smith reporting this morning in downtown Memphis at the Criminal Justice Center. Thank you.
The man accused of killing 6 people on Leicester Street last month was on parole. Tonight, we have the audio tapes of Jessie Dotson convincing the parole board to let him out of prison. Dotson had been behind bars for second-degree murder during his parole hearing last July. His family called him a changed man. But 7 months after his release, he's back in prison, charged with the murders of 4 adults and 2 children. Chief Investigator Ginny DiPrizio uncovers audio recordings of Dotson during his parole hearings last summer. And Ginny, he actually served 13 years for killing a man during a drug deal gone bad.
That's exactly right, Dino. This is the CD of the parole board hearing that freed Jessie Dotson. And on this recording, Dotson and his family begged for his release.
Today, Jessie Dotson went before a judge, and Dotson is no stranger to the criminal court system. Just a few months before the Leicester Street murders, Dotson was in prison serving a sentence for second-degree murder. Last summer, he convinced parole board members he was a changed man.
I have learned, from the mistakes I made by being in here. Back then, I didn't listen to nobody, didn't curl, how other people feel, none of that. But now, I take all that into consideration, other people's feelings, I listen to people more.
The audio tapes revealed that during his time in prison, Dotson was disciplined 29 times and was caught smoking pot 3 times, something Dotson didn't think was a problem, but parole board members did.
If you're incarcerated and you smoking a joint, you don't think that's a problem. I mean, you're violating the rules, and does that say that you can control yourself?
But in the end, after serving 13 years of his sentence, Dotson was released, vowing never to return.
This ain't how I want to spend my life in the penitentiary. This is not the life I want for me. So, what I did.
Tonight in the Leicester Street murder case, the district attorney is seeking the death penalty against accused killer Jessie Dotson. The state grand jury just indicted Dotson for the murders this morning. He faces 6 counts of first-degree murder, 3 counts of attempted first-degree murder, and being a convicted felon with a gun. Police say Dotson killed his brother Cecil, 3 other adults, and 2 children in this house on Leicester Street last March. 3 other children were critically hurt but survived. Officers say one of the surviving children was able to identify Jessie Dotson as the killer. Dotson had been convicted of second-degree murder back in 1994. He had just been released on parole when the Leicester Street murders happened.
All new this midday, the man charged in the deaths of 6 people in the Leicester Street murders pleads not guilty. This morning, a heavily guarded Jessie Dotson made his first court appearance since being indicted on capital murder charges. During the hearing, the judge appointed attorneys for Dotson and set another court date for him, this one on January 15th. Memphis police say Dotson killed 6 people, including his brother and 2 children back in March. 3 other children were also attacked but survived. At the time of the killings, Dotson was out on parole for a murder he was convicted of back in 1994. Shelby County District Attorney Bill Gibbons says prosecutors will be seeking the death penalty in this case.